Alright everybody, today we're going to take a look at a cool piece of software I've been writing and will continue to write here in the future, but it was just very helpful because if you're a normal Linux user, you're probably not using the GUI variants of everything. So, what are we looking at? We're looking at spreadsheets. If you are a FOSS nerd, a Linux nerd, etc., you obviously will be using FOSS software. However, that comes with the problem of if you want to use a spreadsheet, obviously you can't use Google Sheets or Excel. Obviously Google Sheets would run on Linux since it's browser based. Excel maybe runs off of Wine, I'm not sure on that. But still, that's Microsoft cringe and we don't want to deal with that. So our options would then be LibreOffice, except that is slow. It works, it opens up XLSX files, which are the standard Excel files, but it is slow, it is bloated, it's not what we want. So I'm going to show you something cool. So in a similar fashion to how we could be writing text in, let's say, LibreWriter, but we don't do that, we use Vim. Technically we use neovim. Because it's way better, it's fast. You can do everything with Vim keybinds, it's just better in every sense. Same thing with Excel, but now it's like, oh, well, what can you use for your terminal for Excel? Some people, they'd be using like SC, I think stands for Spreadsheet Calculator. Very old, and then someone has made Spreadsheet Calculator-IM, kind of, doing the VI editor. Then there's the next version, that's the VIM editor, Vim, right? VI goes to Vim, but then neovim is like the final magnus opus of Vim. And so, in a similar fashion, we have SC, which was, probably around for forever. We have SCIM, except those keybinds are still trash. They don't feel Vim-like. So now we have neoscim. I almost messed up the name of my own program. As you can see right here, neoscim. So the new spreadsheet calculator improved. Well, not to keep you running, I have it aliased to SC. So let's take a look. Beautiful. What'd you expect? It's an Excel sheet. But in here we can do cool things. Obviously, we can enter some text. Not that surprising, but then we could have some values. So let's say instead of this, so we can now press R to replace the whole cell. Sorry, I should have mentioned this. If we're just over a cell, first off, we're moving with HJKL, Vim binds, because we're not Neanderthals. You can also do stuff like GG to get to the top, capital G to get to the bottom, 0 to get to the front, $sign to get to the end. But you can also prefix those with G. So if we go G, capital G, it takes us just down to line 18 here, because G in normal Vim does things off of, it kind of mutates the keybinds to do what they would visually look like they would do instead of what technically they do. Example, let me open up another editor. We'll just open up a Vim file. Whoopsies, that's not what we want to do. And we will just write some lines of text, and these actually need to be longer. We'll just write it off the screen. And I also need to set no wrap. Set no. Oh, what? Set wrap. We want it to wrap. I'm so used to turning these editors into be usable for code. So now you can see, and maybe you can't, but we're on line 4 here, and line 4 actually spans 2 lines, because if we go down once, this is just pressing J once, we're going 2 lines, because that is technically correct. To go down 1 line would be to jump. However, sometimes you don't want to do that, so you'll prefix it with G and then J, and you'll go down visually 1 line. So we're doing the same thing here in our SC editor. G, capital G, will take us visually to the bottom of the screen, where capital G takes us actually to the bottom. And then same thing if we scroll down, so now our top line is 25. I think this works. I haven't tested this. Maybe this is a bug. G. No, I'm not sure if that one works yet, but I'll have to write that one in. But the rest of the directions should work. So anyways, we have some text. We can use I or A to start editing it. Very normal. We can also press R if we want to replace the text. So you can see it didn't put something in the buffer up there in the top left, whereas I my cursor goes to the end of it, R, we just get a new buffer to put in there. So you can still use V to do visual mode like you would in Vim. So sorry the camera's bouncy. I'm on an outdoor table, obviously, as you can see the sky behind me. Imagine that. So some cool things we should be pointing out though. Let's say I am taking care of some business for someone, and I'm maybe buying some equipment. And so I buy, assorted things. I buy a $50 item, I buy a $20 item, I buy a $13 item, I buy a $8 item. All right, now we have all these different costs that we've incurred. We need to charge them. We need to figure out how much the total is. We could go through here and manually add up. It's like, ooh, it's 50 plus 20, so it's 70 plus 10 is 80 plus 383 plus 891. And we're like, whoa! But that's lame. We have computers, so we don't have to do math. So what we can do, we can start a cell, and we'll start it with the equal sign. Sum AA, boom, 91. So what just happened there? Well, cells can be a multiple different values, but they're all entered the same way. This is a big improvement over SCIM, because in SCIM you have to specifically put a text string, you have to specifically put a value, have to specifically put a number. Here, they're all the same. Under the hood, the system just duck types it. If you're familiar with coding, duck typing, it just looks at it and it's like, can this be a number? And then if it can't parse out, like the word equipment cannot become a number, so it's like, can't be a number. Well, maybe in fact it is a formula. And so then it checks if the cell starts with the equal sign, and if it does, we'll treat it as a formula, like what we did here with the sum command. But if it can't become a formula, then it's like, well, guess it's a string. And that's also delineated by how they look. Numbers are white. Functions have a little underline on them. I don't know how good they'll come across on the screen. And then pink for strings. So now we have the sum. Now you'll notice that AA didn't bother with the string. Ranges will just ignore strings. Pretty nice. But we can also do, let's say now so $91. Let's say we also have some hours that we need to charge them for. We did 10 hours, 2 hours, 2.6 hours. There we go. And so now the sum would be, CC, right? If we did 14.6 hours, but let's say our rate is $25 an hour. So these were in hours. Here's our total hours. Now what we can do is we can make this equal to D1 times E. What is that? 1. That's funny. It came out to that. 365. So now they owe us $365. And so you can see something cool here that you maybe didn't even notice because it was just seamless. Here we have a function, and it is the total sum of the entire column of C that outputs to 14. We can use the output of a function as the input of another function. Obviously, you would expect that to work, but that does take effort in the coding realm to make that work. But I just want to point out that it should just flawlessly work. If stuff isn't working, and it's not working how you would think it would be working, that's a bad deal. But anyways, there's also some math functions given us by the underlying engine that allow for some fun things. We could also do, equals. I think math pow for power. Let's see, 2 to the power of 10. Yeah. So it has some fun math stuff. There's also like log 2. There's a bunch of different things. You'd have to look at the README to see all those. I'm not a math wizard, so I don't do a ton of complicated math. Do lots of multiplication and adding. But anyways, so now let's say you need to export this data, equipment and the sum. So you want to export just this data. Well, we could save the whole file, and it can save as a CSV if you want to save the file. And also, cool thing, if we save as a CSV, it will do what I call rendering. I don't know if that's the correct term, but it will not save the functions as functions. It'll save their output value. It's like rendering the functions to their final value. So we could, save the whole file to, like file, CSV. Now it's saved to file CSV, which is great and all. By default, it saves to kind of a pseudo CSV file where it doesn't render the formulas, so then you can open it back up, change the formulas as you need. But if you save it as CSV, it will render out the files. But let's say you don't want to save everything that you have here, you want to save just this. Well, I made commands on ranges just for you. Other CSV. Now that's saved just our selection to a file called other.csv, which is pretty cool. So now you can export just things you need to, let's say, your clients. There's also cool things with like graphing. There's a fill command that I should probably tell you about in a later episode, but I don't want to bloat up this one too much. Just mostly want to tell you that you can now do spreadsheet calculations in the terminal, and you don't have to hate yourself for it, because